How we doing, guys? Now we've got rain all weekend, so I've hopped up onto the carport to get started on the bed frame. Now this right here is about $200 in wood. We're gonna be building the majority of the frame out of 30 by 42 millimeter lengths. And I've also got some 30 by 30s which we're gonna use to support the middle. So the rough idea for this one is to build 3 separate rectangle frames and then cover it with some painted MDF at the end to make it look professional. My boxes are gonna act as a U-shaped couch as well as my storage. And in the middle, we're gonna have a table which pops down to make the full length bed. I like this design the best because I feel like it makes the best use of the space for when you're not sleeping. And ultimately, I want a really nice area to hang out with people when we're away on trips. The most difficult part of this job is going to be keeping in mind all the little measurements we need to keep the area functional and ergonomic. We're gonna have a little pull-out table at the back here. So I need to raise the floor in the middle about 70 millimeters to factor in for the drawer sliders, which means when designing the height of the couches, we have to factor in the raised floor as well as the height the mattress is gonna sit on the finished bed. So there's a few things to consider, but that's why we've got our trusty notebook, and I'm gonna be writing down all those calculations before we get started building anything. I'm gonna clear the space and play around with the ergonomics a little bit to finalize the design. We've now done a little floor plan, so I'm gonna go ahead and start cutting out the pieces to make those frames. So now that I've gotten started with laying out the base layer, we've come across 3 little snags. The first one being that I think the table looks way too big. The second one being that I have to cut out the slots for my heater now before the framework goes in around it. And the final one is that I wanted to block out my wheel wells to make them look a bit nicer. So we're gonna go ahead and do all of that, and then we can continue on with the framework. To do these wheel wells, I've just got an off-cut 12mm ply and a flat piece on top. Using a straight pencil, we're marking that line there. And that should give us our piece going this way. So let's cut this out. Now we've got my wheel well cover built. I'll be honest, this came together super easy. I pretty much just lay all my pieces across it and then use a pencil to trace the inside, cut out what line I had, and then made little adjustments as it came together. We've got a flat base that's gonna go straight down on top. Then using my planer, we've put a little curve on the edges there, so when it all sits down, that is looking pretty damn tidy. So if you're working on some wheel well covers, just trace the inside, put your pieces together like a puzzle, and glue them down. The next step before we build that framework is going to be cutting out some holes so I can build a channel for my heater to pop under the seats. So I've just marked a little bit over where we need to cut. I'm gonna square that out, and that should give us plenty of room to work in behind there when I end up building those channels. I'm also gonna be cutting off to the height of where my step's going, just so if we ever do need to get this panel off, it's gonna be a little bit easier. So now to finish the step here, we're gonna go ahead and chuck some liquid nails in between the panel and the metal underneath. And then once there's a bit of coverage on the pieces, I'm gonna use some little bullet head nails and just tap it in the sides to hold it nice and tight. And then when that sets, that should all look nice and neat, held together. There we go, the wheel well cover is all finished. I'm just making the final decisions regarding the height of my seating. So what I've done is, I've got a regular camping chair that sits about 400 mils high, and that feels pretty good for seating and gives good visibility out the windows. Only problem is I'm having the floor raised by 100 mil to have my fold out table around the back. So, gone ahead and got my drink bottle, which is 100 mils, and then I've factored in for the cushion that's gonna be on top as well, to give approximately the height that's gonna end up. And this is still pretty good. I've got a fair bit of clearance up top for my head. I've got this on the floor at 100 mil high, so I get a feel for where it's all gonna sit. And to be honest with you, this is super comfortable. So we're gonna build the seating at 500 mil off the ground, and I think that's gonna end up sitting pretty comfortably. So now that we have the majority of the pieces cut out, I think we're just gonna start screwing it off. I'm still not totally sure about how it's all coming together, so I think if we get the base frame and just screw off like 3 different sections, then that's gonna give us a little bit more to work with. So let's run with that. To join all these pieces, I'm just gonna be using 75 mil bugles, and we'll basically just drill a pilot hole from the side and then send it in. So a few of these sections overlap in weird ways. I've got this top piece here that's gonna cut everything off. So I basically just have to go a little bit slow and work out the best ones to screw first, so we don't block anything when we're trying to put it back in. I've got my 2 base frames all joined up, which means we can do the same for the top and then look at connecting them. Just for a little taste, this is van building in winter. We've now got most of the top and the bottoms all screwed off. So I'm gonna start chucking some uprights on the bottom pieces, and then we can lay our top section on that. Cutting all my uprights now, and we're gonna do them at 440 millimeters. Now, as I've started putting everything together, some of the measurements just weren't adding up. So I've gone ahead and laid everything out right on the floor where I can see a little bit clearer how things are going to come together. I've had to recut a couple of pieces because as I made little adjustments around the build, the plan's changed. But now that I can see it all laid out here, it's looking a lot better, and I'm fairly confident this is all going to come together square. So with the layout finalized, we can start screwing off the upright pieces onto the bottom layer. There's going to be a few pieces that I won't be able to screw in once the actual framework's inside the van. So for that top frame, I'm putting in some extra bits outside the van, and then I'm going to have to put that whole framework in as one piece. Now that we have the two sides of the bed frame almost fully constructed, the final thing is going to be to join them with our long pieces. Now ideally I'll be putting the two pieces in separate and join them in there. However, due to how tight they're going to be against the wall, I won't be able to put that screw in inside the vehicle. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to maneuver that top frame in there, although it's going to be super tight. Alright, it's all knocked together, so now we just have to see if it fits. Yeah, so that's not gonna work. Not the end of the world. I think we're just gonna have to cut the two long pieces in the middle and then put a reinforcing piece on the inside. To be honest with you, it'll probably end up stronger that way. So let's give them a cut and then put them in as two separate pieces. Alright, now we've got two pieces. Let's see if that works a little bit better. It actually works pretty well. With this framework now in, we're going to start by screwing the top piece into the uprights. And once the two sides are locked together and square, we'll take some measurements, make sure it's in the right spot, and then join them together on those middle pieces behind me. So I'm not sure exactly where we went wrong with the measurement. But this middle gap here is 15 millimeters too big. We want the whole thing to be 600 mil. So in order to get it sitting properly, I'm going to have to take 15 millimeters out of that middle piece, and that should lock everything in a bit nicer. So now I'm going to screw my joining pieces into these middles, and then we can go ahead and get the actual frame fixed down. My screws are a little bit long to go through these pieces, so they'll have to be replaced eventually, but for now, that's going to do very nicely. With everything screwed together, we now just have to get the positioning right and then fix it into the vehicle itself. I've double checked the position that it's in, and I'm using this little 600 millimeter piece as a marker to make sure the table's gonna fit right. It's all looking good. So now I'm gonna be fixing the outside piece of the framework into these little runners that I've already glued to the van. We now got those sides fixed off for the top of the frame, so now we're gonna line up the bottom to make sure it's all square. And then this bed frame's fixed in. And as always, we have to take a little moment to appreciate the sunset. That's pretty nice. Now that my bed frame is mounted inside the vehicle, the next thing to work on is going to be my pull-out table around the back.